the energy internet. So if you want to be impressed by me, I actually own the URL for this, just saying. If you go to this, it takes you to the book. But the parallels that I mentioned about mainframes to laptops and all that, those are tiny parallels compared to the parallel of a future energy system that works and operates exactly like the internet does. A couple people here might be old enough to remember when we were in elementary school and we did the, for me, elementary school duck and cover, nuclear war is going to happen, so we hide under our desks. That's great. Oh, I love it. But anyway, we did. And the U.S. war machine, the business operations of the United States relied heavily on communications. And back at the time, nearly all communications in the United States were owned and operated by AT&T as a monopoly. The largest ever single monopoly in the history of the United States, dwarfs any of the utilities. And the parallels between that monopoly and electric monopolies are covered heavily in my book. And if this was a communications group, I would tell you all about those parallels, but my heart is not with communications, with computers. So glad to be here. But they knew they had this intrinsic problem that you couldn't, if there was a nuclear attack or a large-scale attack in the United States, that the communication systems would be the first thing they went after. We see that in the Ukraine with the energy and communication systems in Russia. So how do you make a system that's resilient against attack? And you make a completely distributed system. And I didn't get into it as much in the book as I wanted, but if you have not read about the mountains, political mountains and policy mountains and funding mountains that the early internet people, the ARPANET, had to surmount to get to the internet, it's really inspiring. It's probably a lot of documentaries, I don't know of any, but it's a great story. But they designed the system exclusively around resilience, so that when the system went out, one portion of it, one node, one central piece, whatever, when that piece was taken out by a bomb, the entire system would continue to work. And one of the stories I want to tell you, can I borrow that book, Rena? There's I was going to read this section to you. I don't remember, I'm going to look up the page real quick. It's called The Energy Internet. It's, let's see. I thought I'd find it fast. All right, Bill, hold on. I wrote this. Oh, there it is, page 324. So I'm going to just read you this, because this is, I'm actually genuinely curious if any of you have heard this story before, because there's a couple stories in the book that I kind of put together from little pieces that I'd never read before, and this is one of my favorite ones, and it's really applicable here. This is the beginning, the first internet packet ever sent. This is a great story. Has anyone heard this before, or even bits of it? You may have heard the pieces, but the total story I have not seen. I'm just going to read it if you'll forgive me. On October 29th, 1969, just 3 months after Neil Armstrong took the first steps on the moon, researchers at UCLA in Los Angeles telephoned their counterparts 350 miles away at Stanford Research Institute, now SRI, in Palo Alto. They wanted to talk live as they attempted a remote login using the new system ARPANET, the precursor to the modern internet. This is the very first attempt to send packetized digital data over a distance. As a graduate student at UCLA named Charlie Klein, who's probably on your wall somewhere, typed in an L for login and asked the SRI researcher over the telephone, "Did you get an L?" SRI replied, "Yes." So Klein took another breath. He typed an O and asked, "Did you get an O?" And again, SRI said, "Yes, we see the O." Then Klein typed G. The system crashed. An hour later, they rebooted everything, and Klein retyped login, and that time it worked, and the internet was born. But here's the fun part. The internet's first communication was a perfect reflection of what has become since. The very first message was LO, low. Lo and behold, the very first internet message was low, and it was so prescient about how impactful those two letters would be to the future of everything we take for granted. The part that I love, and I'd never read anywhere else, was the first three letters sent over the internet. L-O-L. And so the combination of low and LOL is the first things that ever were sent over the internet on the planet Earth. The juxtaposition absolutely warms my heart, and I think covers every single thing about what the internet has become in the 50 years since.